All right, welcome to technical session number 38, where we're going to start getting into troubleshooting Windows. If I'm not mistaken, we're going to be delving a little bit into command line interface and utilizing that somewhat as a diagnostic tool as well as repairs. We're going to be identifying many of the common issues that come up with Windows and common troubleshooting applications to use when diagnosing the problems. We're going to be able to describe how to resolve some common issues using the appropriate troubleshooting tools and name which system, utility, administrative tool, or command line to use for given scenarios. So we're going to be getting a little bit more into the command line and talking about some of the key things we're going to need to be able to use. With regards to the A+, you need to have a basic command or a basic mastery of the command line and how to use it in a diagnostic sense. We will talk about that. There are certain functions that you will not have access to, like the help function, because if you're in a live environment, you can type help and it can kind of give you a list of commands that you're able to use at that time. They do not grant you that access during the A+. You have to know the commands off the top of your head. But don't worry, it's not going to be too crazy. It's usually pretty straightforward what they're asking you to do. And I'll even let you know the one that I could not remember for the life of me and ended up missing it. But thankfully, I got all the other steps prior to that right. So I still got it mostly correct. So behavior skills and mindsets we want to keep in mind. Persistence. Most of what we do is practice and exposure. Developing those muscle memories. Don't just give up the first time you're unable to do things. That's why when we ask you guys when you're doing your labs, please give it 3 honest attempts before you ask for help. That way you're challenging yourself. You're pushing yourself to achieving, these tasks on your own and then reaching out. When you do reach out, that's where teamwork comes in. If a team member reaches out to you, if you are able to help them out. That way it will be reciprocated when your time comes and you need assistance. If you are one of the more experienced members of the team, you educating somebody on how to do something also ingrains that knowledge in you, because your ability to reword it and instruct somebody how to do something or being able to explain it simply makes your mastery of the subject even greater. So please don't discount that ability. All right, start off strong here. JR, can you please read for us?
Overview. Problems with an operating system usually affect the overall operation of the computer. Learning how to identify and troubleshoot some of the most common operating system issues is a huge percentage of what PC repair techs do on a daily basis. Software is a complex and multifaceted. What is complex and multifaceted? Additionally, there are many places where things can go wrong. This makes operating systems one of the most confusing components to troubleshoot. With the proper plan of action and a good backup, you can approach these problems with confidence.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So yeah, operating systems are exceedingly complicated. It's millions of lines of code just to make it so that we can, look up cat videos on YouTube. It's, very, very complex. Whenever they make minor changes to one aspect over here, unfortunately, it can have negative ramifications over on the other side, because of the interconnectivity of a lot of the code they're creating, which is partly why we want to test things before we upgrade them. When something does go wrong, we want to take a systematic approach in trying to troubleshoot it. But thankfully, a good portion, well, not necessarily thankfully, but a good portion of our issues tend to be user error. and it's mostly educating the user on how things are occurring, or they fall into some basic categories where it leads us down specific paths for repair. Many of the common symptoms that are going to require some of your operating system troubleshooting are going to be crash screens or both side errors, blue screen of death. If you've used Windows for any length of time, you are intimately familiar with the both side error that pops up. What you may not have been familiar with is every single time it pops up, it gives you the specific error that's causing the problem, and you can research that error. Failure to boot, improper shutdowns, if like power, like there's an instant power kill or something like that. Spontaneous shutdowns and restarts, device fails, and so on and so on. We'll be getting into each of these. All right. See here, Danielle, can you please read about our blue screen of death?
A blue screen error happens when processes running in kernel mode interrupts a problem and Windows must stop. It is also known as a stop error or blue screen of death. A stop error at the top and the specific number of the error at the bottom will help with troubleshooting.
There you go. So whenever you get this screen, you try to record that information so that you can look it up and see what's causing it. Usually the error will pop up right here. The circle is a little bit off on that, unfortunately. But yeah, it's right here, and you can look up that error and see what is causing that particular issue. And the three things they call it is a blue screen error, blue screen of death, or a stop error. Although most frequently it will be the B-side error or both side errors. Somebody will say, I got the blue screen of death. Questions so far? So if you're getting one of these upon startup, look up the error code. Sometimes, especially considering how quickly computers load nowadays, that screen may only pop up for a quick second and then it's gone. Quick tip, use your phone, video record the computer booting so you can see that blue screen pop up and turn off, and then you can play it back and pause it when the blue screen is on, and you can get your error number then. So I've seen that happen a few times where the error is flashing too quickly to be able to read what the error is. Questions so far? So here's an example of where you can kind of go and check on the Microsoft website. You can research and see what that particular error is related to. So you can go to Microsoft's main site, run a search for it, and they'll basically just give you an explanation. So it's pretty straightforward, thankfully. And depending on the security levels your administrator uses, the errors may be very, very general or extremely specific depending on what they allow. Because unfortunately, from a security perspective, hackers may at times intentionally try to cause errors, and then the error codes they receive grants them information as to what systems you're using. And then once they know what systems you're using, they know what vulnerabilities to attack. So as a combat to this, system administrators may use very generic codes in order to improve security. It's kind of a back-end way to protect your systems. All right, so here's a list of some others. Do we need to memorize these? No, it's just kind of an example to let you know different types of errors that you can come across: inaccessible boot device, NTFS file system, bad pool caller, and it lets you know, gives you kind of a definition as to what that error means and can lead you to methods on how to repair it. questions so far? So just a couple of visual examples of the blue screen of death. All right. That we're not even 10 minutes in. We're already 20% of our way through the presentation. Happens just that quick. All right. Tools to troubleshoot B-side errors. Kevin, can you please read for us?
Want me to read the whole thing or just?
Yeah, if you could. It's pretty quick.
All right. Tools to troubleshoot. Tools to troubleshoot BSOD. There are many Windows tools that can be used to help find a solution to a problem with a system. Many technicians use a 6-step troubleshooting process to help them solve PC-related problems. To solve blue screen stop errors, use the following tools to examine the system and solve the problem. Use the web to search the error code on the BSOD. Check Event Viewer after restart to look for errors. Windows updates to apply patches to the OS. System restore if unsure which changes to undo. Memory diagnostics tool to check memory, and check disk to check the hard drive for errors.
Excellent, thank you. So it's just a basic list of how we would go about our troubleshooting process, right? We talked about some of these already. Many of these should already be familiar to us from previous technical sessions, right? So search the error code. You get the error code, go on, hit your coworker Google up and say, hey, can you tell me what this is? And they will, come back with a pretty quick answer. Here's typically what this error represents. Straightforward. Event Viewer. What is kept in Event Viewer? Why do we go there? What important pieces of information are kept in the Event Viewer?
It's like the logs for all the things that happen.
Wonderful. Exactly. That's where all the logs are. Everything that occurs on the computer, everything that's been done, it's all kept in the logs. So if something all of a sudden starts consuming a huge amount of resources and causes the system to fail, that would be in your logs. So you'd be able to go there and kind of sift through that information and help diagnose where the origin of the problem may be coming from. Windows updates for patches. So say you've updated to Windows 11 and you think it's really awesome, but about 2 days after you get it, things start crashing left and right. But luckily you go to the Windows website and they say, hey, there was an error in some of the code causing repetitive crashes. Here's a patch to fix it. So you can go out there, download that patch, update it, and should solve the majority of the issues with operating systems. This is a lot of the reason why when new updates come out, a lot of people are hesitant to get the update until like a week or two after, because they want to make sure all the bugs are discovered, patches are in place before they make that jump. And that way it's a cleaner transition for themselves. System restore, we talked about that one where you could go back to previous settings in the past. What does system restore not restore? So like, what does it not roll back in time if you've done something? What does it not protect?
User data?
Huh?
User data?
User data like?
Yes, like documents, like PowerPoint, stuff like that. Like
Perfect.
Pictures. Yeah.
Yeah, documents, like files, things like that that you may have deleted or that have gotten corrupted. System restore is not going to help you there. They're going to go back to a previous version, maybe of your operating system, or before you installed something or something along those lines, but it's not going to save your files. What do we need to do that, to protect that stuff? Backup. So we need to back up our data. And then we briefly talked about memory diagnostics tools when we talked about what? So if we're diagnosing memory, what specifically are we trying to diagnose?
What do you mean, the RAM modules?
There you go, RAM modules, right? Because we're
Okay.
talking about memory, we're not talking about storage, right? So memory diagnostics instantly should lead you to RAM modules. That's what we're trying to make sure are still functioning properly. And then check disk will check the hard drive for errors and see if the hard drives are still functioning. Are there any corrupt sectors, things like that? What's another tool that would alert us possibly if we were having problems with our hard drive or our hard drive is degrading?
Smart reporting.
Smart. Not a foolproof system, but it can give you forewarning if your drives are starting to fail. Very good. Sorry. Questions, comments, concerns on this? Were most of these familiar before we started going over them because of previous T sessions? So we kind of originally just told you what they were. Now we're starting to put into place when you would use these things. And I know what you're thinking. Is there possibly a simulation or labs where we can go through and work on some of this stuff? You're in luck. Test Out has labs where we can work on a lot of this stuff. All right, some more actions for troubleshooting ESOD errors. Bernard, can you please read for us, sir?
More actions to troubleshooting BSOD. After a restart, a Windows error message box might appear with useful information. Undo any recent changes. If a device, driver, or service that caused the problem is listed, use Windows Explorer to locate the program file. You can try to reinstall the device or program. Check archive messages in the Action Center.
Excellent. Action Center. Where's Action Center located?
Bottom right.
Notification area.
Notification area, also called the?
Bottom right. System tray.
There you go. Yes, it is on the bottom right. But yes, so you can go to it through there and look at your archive messages and see if there are any error messages that you may have missed previously. Particular drivers are causing the issue, probably didn't download properly. Delete that driver, reinstall it. Should fix the problem. If you made a recent change, like you, for some unknown reason, decided to download Valorant, you know, it may require some additional measures to correct the problem. But you can undo any recent changes. If you download an application, all of a sudden everything's starting to go haywire. It's likely the application may be causing this problem. Remove that application, uninstall it, see if that fixes it. Try reinstalling it to see if it was just a bad install, something along those lines. Part of why we always ask, was anything changed on your system recently? Basically, was anything added or taken away from your system recently that might be causing the issues you're experiencing? Failure to boot. Tomas, can you please read for us?
When a computer fails to boot, it's necessary to determine whether the problem relates to hardware or software. In this screen, the OS hasn't even started, so the problem is hardware related or wrong boot order in the BIOS.
There you go. So how far along we get in the boot process will point us to a software or a hardware issue. So when they're talking about boot order, what do they mean?
Post.
post, well, post would happen first, and then you would get to boot order.
Oh, okay.
So, but you're knocking on the right door, it's happening in that same place.
Talking about booting from a hard drive or optical drive or USB.
Excellent. So you're talking about the order in which you're going to be going through your systems looking for an operating system. So typically it may be something like optical drive, USB, hard drive, network. And they may have a specific network address for it to go to. So first it's going to go to the optical drive. If there's nothing there, it's going to go to your USBs. If it sees no operating system there, it's going to move to the hard drive. It's a hierarchy where it's going to go looking for an operating system to boot up from. Some people will set it up to where they'll do USB, hard drive, then an optical drive, then a network. That way, why would you put the USB first? Some people will run Linux off of a USB and they can just plug the USB in. It boots into Linux. They can operate off of Linux. That way it's easy rather than setting up a multi-boot system. And then when they turn the system off, they just unplug the USB, they boot back up, it boots into Windows, no problem. If you're running emulators, like we had an old video game emulator that my kids loved, and it was on a USB stick, and we would just plug it in. It had all the games on it, all that fun stuff. Because of the boot order, it looked at the USB first, boots into it. And, you know, operated as an emulator. When we shut it down, turn it back on, it booted right back into Windows. This is awesome, you know, way to set it up. In an enterprise setting, you almost never want the USB to boot before the regular system, because it essentially is allowing for a backdoor into your system. Yeah, I'll set this one in Slack. Hold on 1 second. Yeah. So if we fail to boot and it's happening instantly, and it says operating system not found. I don't know if you can read that on that screen. It is kind of in small type. So it's, you know, in a black screen, it says operating system not found. We need to go into our BIOS and look at our boot order, because it may be, maybe somebody was messing around in the BIOS and we keep our operating system on the hard drive and they remove the hard drive from the boot options. Can't find it. Or it gets flipped somehow and it's going to look for a network address that is irrelevant with regards to operating systems, and it's not getting to the hard drive system, something along those lines. So we need to change our boot order so that it makes more sense. So we just need to verify that information in the BIOS, go from there. Here's another one. Oscar, can you read first, please?
Tool will troubleshoot failure to boot. If the hard drive doesn't boot because the OS is corrupt, access Windows recovery environment. Different ways to access Windows recovery environment: booting from the Windows installation media and select repair, using repair your computer option on the advanced boot option, or using a system repair disk created before the problems.
Very good. So how many of us have ever installed an operating system? It says, do you want to create a system repair disk now? Now be honest, how many of us opted to actually do that and not say, I'll do it later? Okay, we got one.
Almost always, except when you're at work.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, when you're at home, I know you're just like, it's my new shiny computer. I just want to get in and mess with it. So you're like, later, just skipping past everything. But no, it is good to create that system repair disk, so that if something does go wrong, you can use it as a recovery option for your system. Thankfully, you can install the drive. Like back when they came with CDs, you could put the CD in there and it will give you the option to select repair, and then you can work through the process that way, or advanced boot option, and try to repair it from the primary partition on your hard drive, or recovery partition, excuse me, not primary, recovery. So 3 main ways we can do it: WinRe or Windows recovery environment is where we would repair a corrupt operating system. And yes, there is a lab in Test Out where you will do this. And I'm not going to say for 100% certainty, but there is highly likely you will get a performance-based question that looks something like this. And there's going to be some command line involved in it. And that was the command line that I forgot. It was the one command I needed at the very end, and I couldn't remember it. All right. So for this one, failure to boot in other operating systems. Tomas, can you read for us, please? All right. Jamari, can you read for us, please?
Mac OS offers a power recovery tool called OS X Recovery that enables to rebuild a Mac with a reboot and key combination. Command plus R at boot to access the recovery environment. This enables a full reset, but also gives options for other tools for troubleshooting. Linux offers two boot managers, Grub and
Lilo.
Grub is the most common. If Grub gets corrupted or deleted, Linux won't start and it will show a missing Grub error message at boot.
Yep, you may not ever get asked about Lilo. Likely you will be asked about Grub. And just keep that in mind or make a note that that is a Linux boot manager, Grub. But thank you, Jamari. Command R for Mac OS to get you into the recovery environments and other troubleshooting tools.
I'm sorry, I was actually creating my restore media on the previous slide. You said you missed a particular bit. I think it's a win RE, right? Is that the
well,
what were you saying about it?
Line, it was like boot rec ng, something like that. When I see it, I'll let you know, like that was the exact command line that I forgot. And I sat there, I spent 20 minutes putting in like over 100 different commands trying to figure out which one I was missing, and none of them worked. And then I finally was just like, I just yielded and ended the exam. I was like, I'm not getting it.
I am glad you said it because I thought you meant multiple choice. So this is something that you would actually have to remember.
This is a performance-based. They have performance-based ones where you will actually have to do things in the system.
Yeah, I didn't know that this was one of those. I thought it was just a multiple choice thing. Okay.
Yeah, no, there's some of those in there, but again, if you are well versed in Test Out, whatever they throw at you in the A+ is going to be significantly easier.
Okay.
So if you have good command over what you're doing in Test Out, that is going to be more difficult than what they're going to throw at you in the A+. Our goal is to over prepare you. That way we can compensate for nerves you may feel on the day.
I see.
But good question. But their version of it would be, you would be booting from a repair disk. So you wouldn't need to go into advanced boot or any of that other stuff. You would actually go into a repair environment. You would be booted into it immediately. So
I see.
But I think that was, trying to remember. I'll have to see if I can remember if it was 1001 or 1002. DW, do you remember by chance?
About what?
Did you not? Where you had to do the Windows recovery? Is that 1001 or 10? Well, did you have it in 1001?
No, it's 1002.
Okay, it's got to be 1002 then. I figured I'd ask.
Yeah, we didn't go through that. We went over printers and hardware and stuff like that.
Yes. And all of you get the joys of going over printers next week. And then at least 80% of you will join the paperless movement.
.802.11 was a big thing on 1001. So.
Yeah, 802.11. Yeah, that was a big thing. In the especially in the multiple choice. But I think also performance based, they dealt with it too.
Yeah, well,
So
two of my labs had to do with 802.11.
Oh, did 2 of them?
Yeah, 2 of them
Okay.
you had to know. I had to set up a router and I had to set it up using Mimo. So then I had to select the correct, the correct network for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then another one was setting up a iPad and also selecting the correct bandwidth.
Okay.
And, and then there were a bunch of multiple choice questions.
Okay. Don't worry, we'll go over 802.11s on Tuesday of next week.
That's why we're saying in these next 2 weeks, big stuff coming up. So.
Yeah. So this is what it would look like in your Windows recovery environment. So from here, you would select the appropriate menus, be like system image recovery, startup repair if you're having issues repairing it, system restore if you want to go all the way back to factory reset, or you can dive right into the command prompt if you wish and you want to diagnose it from there and run some like check your hard drives, do a check disk, see if everything's working right, stuff like that. And then startup settings as well can be adjusted. So this is essentially what it would look like if you enter that environment. Yes, that's it right there. Boot rec fix MBR. That was the one that I forgot. So why are you saying, oh my gosh, Oscar?
It just took a while to find that.
Yeah, that's the one I missed. So boot rec fix MBR. Most of the commands are way simpler than this that you need to know. That is hands down the most complicated one you need to remember, but I would write that one down. Boot rec / fix MBR. I think it is lowercase f though, if I'm not mistaken, because sometimes it gets testy about that stuff. But yeah, I would remember that one and associate that with repairing your master boot record, because that's what that is. Boot recovery / fix master boot record MBR. And I was just so stressed out during the test, I completely just blanked on this one.
What do you say it did? To repair your what?
It fixes the master boot record. So if something was deleted or corrupted in the boot record that wouldn't allow you to boot into your system, this would go back and reinstall the original files for your boot records.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. And if you use like the optical drive to boot into it, this is what it would look like. So it would load it, it would boot up looking at something like this. And then you could go to repair your computer, and that is where it would go to try to fix that master boot record if something had corrupted it in the past. All right. Questions, comments, concerns?
I don't know if it was Gally that asked a question about how to get into your locked out machine. That's where you can do it, where it says repair your computer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have a
All right.
question.
Yes.
So in WinRE, like how do you like if you don't create that disk, like when you're installing your software, how do you make that disk then?
You
Like,
can
how do
go
you
back
do
and make it
later?
later.
I'm doing it right now because I forgot. Yeah. So yeah, you can just type it in your search. If you're using Windows 10, just type it at the bottom of your screen. Just put create recovery drive, and it will pop right up.
Okay.
All right.
Alrighty.
I'm glad we're all thinking about this stuff now. I love seeing this come along, especially like when we get to routers and networks and stuff like that. We see, you know, a lot of people going like, oh, I never would have thought about, you know, I never would have considered that, or, oh, that's interesting. And then you see, you know, people start getting into some of their own equipment and getting to know it a little bit better and working with it a little bit more. And it becomes a lot more familiar. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to pause it. Okay, moving along. Symptoms of improper shutdown. Stephanie, can you please read for us?
A root system will begin automatically shutting down and or restarting while in use. While it could be inactive, hello?
I have to say this one like 5 times in my head. Indicative.
Indicative of hardware problem. It can also indicate a setting misconfiguration problem.
All right, thank you. So rogue systems will automatically start shutting down. There's a couple different things it could be. So we need to kind of work through those problems a little bit. Some of the hardware causes that it can be is essentially anything is basically what it's telling you. It could be memory, motherboard, CPU, video card, system over. Okay, so that's, you know, okay. It could be anything. If you're able to get it up and running and able to look into it, go into Event Viewer and look for hardware failures in your logs. So you're starting to utilize those detective skills. We're going to start going through and seeing if we can, you know, figure out what's causing these issues. Where's the root cause? Logs, great place to start. So we go to Event Viewer. It's where all of our logs are. Start looking through that to see if we can locate where the hardware failures are. Go out and look, have any recent patches come out? Because it could be, you know, just that a recent update came out. It's not really working with other stuff that you have installed. It's crashing pretty frequently. Other people have had this problem. They've come out with a patch to resolve that issue. So make sure you check for patches. Memory diagnostics and check disk. Go through and look and see if there's any issues with your hard drive, any issues with your RAM. A lot of these things are going to kind of come up over and over again because they're our first go-tos for diagnostics. Overheating, go into your BIOS, check and see the temperature of your CPU. Should not exceed 38 degrees Celsius. So this could be a bad cooling unit. Maybe your fans aren't turning on. So listen to see if your fans are turning on right beforehand. If they're not turning off and it's crashing due to overheating, could be a bad fan. Could be when the system was moved recently, it could have been bumped and the cable could have slid a little bit loose. It could be that you recently went in to repair something and you didn't plug the CPU fan back in. Happens, we're human, right? Could be you were replacing the CPU or you were doing general maintenance on it and you removed the heat sink and you saw that the thermal paste was dry and crumbly and decided, yeah, I'll replace it next time. And you went ahead and put it back. And now it doesn't have a good enough seal to be able to transfer that heat. So we would go into our BIOS with the UEFI, check the temperature, make sure we're not overheating. Endless shutdowns and restarts. This is a nightmare when you get caught in this. This starts to happen. We try to boot into safe mode where you can change the Windows setting to control automatic restarts. So you got system properties, Windows 7, and then you can change your automatic restarts. And then run a virus scan. All right. Failed to start or not detected. Rahel, can you please read for us?
Device failed to start or not detected. Usually when device failed to start or not detected by the system, the problem involves drivers. Drivers are associated with devices and they can be assessed by looking at the properties for the device. The three most common tabs for an adapter properties dialog box in Device Manager are General, displays the device type, manufacturer, and location. It also includes information regarding whether the device is working properly. Driver displays information on the current driver and digital signer. 5 command buttons allows you to see driver details. Uninstall the driver, update the driver, or roll back the driver to the previous driver when a new driver causes an issue. Resources shows the system resources in use. IO, IQ, IRQ, and so on, and whether there are conflicts.
Wonderful, thank you. So if a particular device fails to start, like a optical drive, a hard drive, could be microphone, webcam, this is where we would go initially to take a look at it, and then break it down into the 3 different tabs that we would typically see. General tab will tell you, yeah, device is working properly. You know, if that's the case, okay. Are my drivers up to date? Do I have the most recent drivers installed in order for my computer to be able to communicate with it? And then system resources. Maybe there's not enough resources available to be able to start up that device. And this would also let you know if there are any conflicts with regards to that. Any questions so far? Devices fail, go to Device Manager. Thankfully, it's one of the most straightforward ones we got. All right. Emily, can you please read for us?
Yeah. Troubleshooting device failed to start / not detect. If the problem is with the device driver, an update driver version can be found on the device manufacturer website. Be careful to download and install the proper driver for the OS. The most common driver-related device issue in a device failure when a newer driver is installed. If this occurs, you can use the rollback driver option in Device Manager or boot into the last known good configuration.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, sometimes you may be operating off of an older operating system intentionally. So the rest of the world may have moved on to Windows 10 or Windows 11 or something like that, but all of our systems operate on Windows 7. So everything, all the applications that we have built for our company are configured to work with Windows 7. So we have intentionally not updated to Windows 11 or 10. So the drivers we would use would not be the most updated for Windows 11 because our system wouldn't know how to necessarily communicate with that. So we need to make sure the drivers we're using are compatible with the operating system and service pack that we have currently. If we make a mistake and accidentally update it, thankfully we can just hit the reset button, go back in time, roll back to a previous version. And again, where do we go if a device is not working?
Device manager.
Device manager, thank you. If the device won't start or is having a problem, we go manage that device, device manager. Here's a basic look at a troubleshooting report. Let you know, might give you some basic issues, what's going on, or tell you if everything is appearing to run okay. So this might be a place where you would start. All right. Let's see here. Greg, this one seems like it'd be right up your alley. If you could read for us, please, sir.
I'm sorry, I'm doing my recovery thing. Let me just go back to my screen here. I am definitely paying attention, don't get me wrong. Just looking at your screen. Let me grab mine. All right. Missing DDL. Okay, symptom, missing DDL message. One of the more useful error messages you can receive indicating a missing DDL file. Is one indicating a missing DDL file. It's useful because it tells you exactly what's missing. DDL files are shared by various components. If they are missing or corrupt, you will receive an error message whenever you do something that requires the file. Make note of the name of the DDL and its location. You can copy DDLs from another machine if the systems are identical path levels, place them in the same location, and the problem should be fixed.
All right. So these files kind of help things start up and communicate with each other, which unfortunately is a pretty good vector for attack. So if somebody's going to be attacking your system, they may rename your DLL files, they may move your DLL files, or they may delete your DLL files in order to make it more difficult for your system to run. Here it says, yes, you can go in as long as you have somebody else who has the exact same operating system and patch level. So like they're at the same level of updates you are, you can go into their DLL file and copy that one specific file and put it back in your system. Huge word of caution. Be very careful if you are ever operating in DLLs. Yeah, sometimes you can also copy it from installation media. And I believe it stands for, was it dynamic link library or is it data link library? Is it data link or dynamic link? Here you go, dynamic link library. So you can go in and look at these things if you want, but again, I put a huge word of caution before you start manipulating anything in the DLL. But yes, if one is missing, corrupted, or damaged, you can copy one from one system and replace it back into another. So that's a way to repair it. Questions so far? With regards to DLLs, for the most part, you just need to have a definitional understanding. They're not going to ask you to manipulate DLL files for the A+. All right. Joyce, can you please read for us?
Most applications have many small programs called components that serve the main program. These small components service often have a .dll extension, dynamic link library. When an error message appears about a missing DLL, reinstall the application, recover it from backup or from the application installation files. The relationship between the main program and the component might be broken. Use a Microsoft Management Console snap-in called Component Service Complex to register components. An older version of Windows use the register 32.exe program to register the component.
Very good, thank you. So you would use component services or COM Plus to register your components so that you can utilize this information later if need be, or the older version, which is the register version, 32.exe or executional program to register the component as well. Option always there to reinstall the application if needed, and kind of start from scratch with it. Obviously, try to troubleshoot prior to going that route. What was that?
Hello?
Yeah, what was that, DW? We can hear you, sir. All right. Any questions with regards to the DLL? If a single file is missing, we can always copy it and put it back in there. If there's other issues with regards to a particular service or application, we can reinstall that application and that may correct the issue as well for us.
It's very useful when it comes to like batch installations, where you can actually install individual. For example, there are some corporations that do a rollout all in one swoop, and there isn't a way to install it per machine. It's really good to know. Had some issues with this, and actually, it was good to know. It was good to know about the registration portion of it, because you can replace the DLL, but it won't. You know, it won't like it.
Yeah.
It won't, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, maybe take a screenshot of this slide just as it's a good reference page. But again, our understanding of DLL for regards to the A+ is going to be more of a definitional sense, not necessarily actively doing it in a performance base. But I do believe there are some labs where you can mess around with this, as well as the sandbox in Test Out, which I highly encourage people to use the sandbox, because you can go in there and do all kinds of stuff, practicing, messing around, break the computers. And if you get things to a point where you can't fix it, you can always just restart the simulation and try again if you wish. So it's a really powerful tool. All right. Symptoms of a service is failure to start. Stephen, if you could please read for us.
Sorry, I lost my mouse.
No problem.
Can be caused by either resource conflicts with another application or misconfiguration of the service. The first place to start is the event viewer, event ID of 7000 with a source of service control manager. Check the service console to make sure the service is set to start automatically. And the solution to this problem could be to uninstall and reinstall the offending application.
There you go. So if you just installed it and it's not working, maybe you have to uninstall it and reinstall it. It does happen. Resource conflicts is a big one, because some people seem to think that their system has unlimited resources. I had 50 web pages open and 30 programs running in the background. What's 31? not realizing their system is going to become slower and slower and slower over time. So if it gets to the point where you've hit that tipping point and you don't have enough resources to start up whatever system or application you're trying to get into, it will basically begin to start and then crash due to lack of resources. And we can go into our event viewer, look at our logs, see if that was the issue or what might be causing it, and then potentially have to uninstall and reinstall. All right. Yuki, can you please read for us?
Sure. Symptom compatibility error. Some applications that function on an older operating system, such as Windows 2000 or Windows XP, experience problems when running on Windows Vista, Windows 7, or Windows 8. The problem is even more acute if the application was made to run on Windows NT or Windows 95/98. When an application will not function for this reason, there are two solutions. It may even require using both measures to make the application function. Set the application to operate in the mode for which it was created. In the properties dialog box of each application is the compatibility tab. Set the application to run as an administrator. Some older applications must run in the security context of an administrator to function.
Excellent, thank you. So you can set individual applications to run on an administrative level, which is kind of nice, but yeah, so you may need to do both of these things, especially if you're running with older applications that have that run off of XP, because again, that was like the favorite, the absolute favorite for many companies for many years because of its stability. And so many were very reluctant to move away from it. And many of the homegrown applications were built right on top of it. So you still need that in order to run these business applications. So you may need to run it in these two different settings together. All right. Let's see here. Ying, can you please read for us, sir?
Symptom, slow system performance. Slow system performance can come from many issues. The first thing to check is the presence of a virus. If the system seems to have an overabundance of this activity. Scan it for viruses using a virus program that reside externally on a CD, DVD, or memory stick. Defragment the hard drive. The more fragmented it is, the slower disk access will be. Check the space on the hard drive when the partition on volume where the operating system is located becomes full. Performance will suffer. Ensure the latest updates are installed. In many cases, updates help to solve performance problems, so make sure they are current. Use task management to determine whether a process is using too much memory or CPU or is simply locked up, and if necessary, end the process.
Excellent, thank you. So again, we're at a checklist. You know, system performance is running slow. Sometimes this can be subjective. You know, so we want to sit there, run a virus scan, make sure we haven't picked up any unfortunate programs along the way. Next, defragment our hard drive if we're still using a mechanical drive. We do not do this if we have a solid state hard drive. So that can help, you know, improve the performance. We will talk about that when we get into allocation tables and stuff like that a little bit later in the cohort. Make sure we have enough space on our hard drive. We need to have at least, like even for defragmentation, we need to have at least 25% free space on our hard drive so that we can still have our paging and swap files active. We have we have room to move things around if we need to, stuff like that. If you're, you know, approaching 90% plus on your hard drive, you're going to start seeing an extreme decrease in your system performance. Make sure you got your latest updates. And if it's still having issues, going into Task Manager, pulling that up, it'll tell you your CPU usage. It'll have a nice little graph, and it'll tell you like percentage-wise based on how much information you're using. And it will tell you which programs are using how much of the system. If you see a particular program using a huge chunk of your memory, it's either frozen or there's a big problem with it. You want to kill that process. If you don't recognize the process, please be sure you look that process up on another system if you have to make sure it is not a critical function before you kill it. Otherwise, you can crash your system. Questions so far? All right. Application issues. So some of the application problems we may come across is the application itself, which is pretty straightforward. Hardware, it may not be compatible with the hardware you're trying to apply it to. Your operating system, they may be mismatched with regards to the type of operating system you have versus the version of the application you're installing. Data, other applications in conflict, and the ever-present ID 10T situation. So here are our steps for moving through application errors. Modanat, can you please read number 1 for us? Step 1.
Good morning. Step 1. Interview the user and the backup data. That's correct, right?
Yep.
Ask the user to reproduce the problem while you watch and try a reboot.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you for calling IT. Have you tried turning it on and off again? So, hey, can you please, like what's happening? Oh, such and such application is broken. Okay, can you please show me what broken looks like? Please see if you can, duplicate the error so I can see what's going on. Once they do that, try rebooting it, see if it works. That doesn't work, make sure at this point we're backing up our data. So any important systems have been, or any important information has been saved at this point. Thank you, Modena. Shamika, can you please read number 2 for us? Step number 2.
Step 2, error message. The web and the log might help. Check Windows 7 and 8 Action Center. Search the web for help. Use Event Viewer and reliable monitors to look for clues.
Wonderful, thank you. So Event Viewer and Reliability Monitor. If systems are crashing on a regular basis, Reliability Monitor will give you kind of updates or information based upon this. Action Center, obviously a good place to go look at your archived messages, stuff you may have missed. And if it's giving you an error message, take that error message and the application you're using, search for it on the interwebs and see if you can find an answer for it. From a procedural standpoint, yes, Ebony. Step number 3. Nesanet, can you please read for us?
Step 3, consider the data or application is corrupted. Application setting might be wrong. Uninstall and restore the application.
There you go. Possibly you didn't get the full file when you downloaded it. Ergo, it's corrupted. Uninstall it and reinstall it and see if that solves your problem. Usually 1 through 3 will solve about 80% of your problems. 70% will be solved by number 1. Just doing a restart. Step number 4. Ogali, can you read for us, please?
Don't mind me, I don't feel that good too.
Okay.
Step solving application errors. Step 1, interview.
No, we
Interview the user.
just step 4, Ogali.
Step 4.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Okay. Step 4, consider outside interference. Suspect a virus, which is 1. Then 2, system resource might be low. 2, another application might be interfering. 3, a service may have failed to start. 4, bad memory. 5, completed hard drive. 6, a background program might be conflicting with the application.
All right, thank you so much. I'm sorry you're not feeling well.
Yeah, I'm having cold. Everybody in my house sick.
Oh no.
Oh Lord.
Well, if you need to take a break, just let us know and go and take a break, okay?
No problem.
You know, hope you get to feel better quick, because I know it's no fun. All right, so it may not be the application itself, it may be outside things interfering. You know, viruses, too many applications open on your system. Another application may not agree. Remember we talked about if you have 2 antiviruses installed on your systems, they can view each other as a virus and fight with each other. That's not necessarily isolated just to antiviruses. Certain applications may not agree with each other. Service itself may have failed to start. And then, you know, other things like the portion of the hard drive it was installed on was corrupted. So it was not the application, it was the actual hard drive that you installed it upon. Things like that. Final step. Back to the beginning. JR, can you please read for us?
Step 5, a problem with an application might be solved by updating or restoring Windows system files. Download Windows updates. Use System File Checker to verify and replace system files, and use System Restore.
Very good. So Windows may not be agreeing with it because maybe Windows is of an older version than the application you're running. So the application may be running on Service Pack 6. You may be running Windows on Service Pack 1. At that point, they may not agree with each other. Questions, comments, concerns? All right. Troubleshooting a hanging application. Melody, can you please read for us?
When an application hangs, use Task Manager to end it. If Task Manager can't end it, use the task list and task kill commands. Task list command returns the process identity DIP. Task kill command uses the process ID to kill the process. Example, use task kill bar more to list running processes. Note that PID of the process you want to end. Example 2212. Enter task kill /F/PID 2212 to forcefully kill the process.
Thank you. So what they're speaking of in these would be your command line functions. So you have task list and task kill. There are a couple ways you can go about it. You can just say like task kill, you know, space Google, you know, something like that, or Chrome. And it will kill all instances of Chrome. Well, what happens if it's just one particular window in Chrome that's causing the problem, but the others you have open are all okay? And you want to target that process. So we can go in and use the task list to list out all the running processes that we have on our system at that current moment. Then we can go down, we find the one we're looking for, then we can get that PID number, or process identify, and then we can heavily target task kill to go after that one specific process. You will get some practice in this in Coursera, and as well as Test Out. So this is a wonderful set of tools for your arsenal. One, being able to look up all your running processes in command line, and the other being able to target and kill a process that might be utilizing too many resources. But your first go would be Task Manager to see if you can end that process. But if it's hung and it's not ending no matter what you do, then you can do a task kill. So I believe in Linux, it's just kill, correct? So it's not task kill, it's just kill. All right, troubleshooting, file fails to open. Kevin, can you please read for us?
When a file fails to open, the application is not installed or the file extension is wrong. A program associated with a file extension is called a default program. Use the default programs window to change the program associated with a file extension. Data sources open database connectivity, ODBC tool can be used to allow data files to be connected to applications they normally would not use.
Correct. Thank you. So have you ever had an instance where you say you didn't have the program on your system that it was originally produced in? So if you didn't have Adobe PDF Reader or something like that, they may allow you to open up in Paint. So it'll allow you to view it as a picture versus a PDF. So you're using a program that it wasn't originally intended to be used in, but you can still kind of work around and utilize it. Or if it was saved in Word, like as a .txt, and you don't have Word on your system, you can open it up in a WordPad or something like that and still utilize the file. The formatting may be different, but it still allows you to gain access and work with that file. Questions so far? Does everybody understand what they mean when they say extension? A file extension. What do they mean when they say that?
It comes after the dot, like the .exe. It coincides with like a program. So like docx would be for Word, and Excel has its own. PowerPoint has its own.
Correct. So like .ppt or .xls, .txt, what have you. It tells you what type of file it is and what type of program you need to open it. JPEG, things like that. Thank you, Oscar. So like in chat, you can see it like the first part of the file, that is the name of it, and then you dot, and then you have an extension on it that tells you the program you utilize to work with that program. So from there, if it fails to open in its original program, you can right click on it, go to your folder options applet in control panel, and then you can try to force it to open up in a different program that may have similar functions and still allow you to either view or utilize whatever file you're trying to access. Questions, comments, concerns? I know you all are just eager, like, can we just get to the command line? I just wonder what the command line. All right. Let's get into some of our tools for troubleshooting. Various problems. We'll kind of go through them, give you a basic look at them, and let you know what types of problems you would typically go here to try to fix. So here's our list we're going to be going through: our BIOS/UEFI, memory diagnostics, system file checker, logs. Where do we go for logs?
Event viewer.
Event viewer, there we go. Yes, that is a question that will come up repeatedly. They'll say like, oh, systems logs, or whatever logs they're where if it has logs in it, event viewer, system recovery, repair disks, etc., etc. So we'll be going through this here real quick. All right, BIOS or UEFI. This is a lot of diagnostic tools based just on this picture. Is this a BIOS or a UEFI?
UE for sure.
Why do we
It's
know
a really
this?
nice one too? Because it's gooey and it's pretty.
Gooey. It's pretty. There you go. So we can use our mouse. We can click around in it. Has updated graphics, all this kind of fun stuff. So we know that is a UEFI, which is most likely what you're going to be coming across current day. Occasionally you might run across an old school BIOS, but mostly you'll be using UEFIs. You'll go here to make sure you're keeping the most current versions of your firmware on your PC, and you can figure out certain problems. You can see your temperature for your CPUs. You can check your fan speeds, make sure those are operating properly. Your boot orders, your memory banks. Are those, are the ones, do you have your memory units installed in the proper banks? Are they working properly? Are those banks even turned on? Hard drives, all this kind of fun stuff can be found in your UEFI and BIOS, and you can come here for diagnostics with regards to those items. Memory diagnostics. So if you want to run memory diagnostics, I do encourage you to try this on your computer. If you have a Windows-based computer, you can go into your command line or practice it on LabSim or test out. If you want to get a couple tries in on there to see what it should look like, and then you can test it out on your own machines. You go into your command prompt. How do we get there? Does anybody remember?
CMD.
Where do you put CMD?
Search bar.
Search bar. So search bar, CMD, or even type in command, and then that app will show up. You can click on it and it will open a window that will take you right into command line. Then you could type in md/shed.exe. All right, Windows desktop will not load. Press the space bar during the boot and select Windows Memory Diagnostic from the Windows Boot Manager screen.
Don't do it now though, guys.
You what?
Ooh. No, I was just saying.
Yeah, don't do it now.
Don't do it now.
Don't do it now. It'll reboot you.
Restart. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So if you cannot boot from the hard drive, you can do a setup DVD. You click the repair, Windows Memory Diagnostic, and you can go into it from there. And essentially what this does is identifies if you have any issues with your RAM and eliminates the memory as a potential problem in your troubleshooting process. So basically says your RAM's okay, so this is not causing your issue. That doesn't mean it says you have enough RAM. It basically says the RAM modules that you have installed are working properly. That's it. All right, SFC or System File Checker. So the purpose of it is to protect your systems and keep your cache files current. So it automatically verifies your system files after the reboot to see if they were any changes or unprotected copies. So if you want to run this, you actually have to run it as an administrator. So in order to get into administrator, like you did, you would go into search, type in CMD, then you would right click on the application, and then you would scroll down. It'll bring up a little menu. You scroll down and you would click run as administrator. So you would need to elevate your privileges. If you request this on an enterprise machine, it is going to ask for your administrative level credentials in order to be able to go in and do this. And then you could go in and type in SFC/scan now. And then it will go ahead and scan your system, see if you have any corrupted files. And if they are found, you might need your setup DVD or recovery disk in order to restore these files. And if it won't run using the above command, you hit scan once, and then it will do so after your next reboot. So the next time you reboot, it'll run the scan at that time. So you don't have to do it right then if you don't want to. So you have scan once or scan now, which does it right then. And you have scan once, which will do it upon reboot. Yes, we do need to know these. Questions, comments, concerns? Again, I know this is a lot. You will get practice with them in both Coursera and in Test Out. I encourage you to redo some of these labs just to build your familiarity with them. I unfortunately did not have Test Out when I was going through the cohort, so I didn't have that powerful tool at my disposal. Most of it had to be done just through rote memorization. You guys have this tool. It's powerful. It's a wonderful tool. Please, please use it. Don't worry about it recording your most recent score. Test Out records your highest score, and that's the one it preserves. So you don't need to worry about erasing your score or losing it or what have you. Please do some of these labs multiple times. Get that practice in, build that muscle memory. All right, logs. All right. Any events that occur on your system stored in logs. There are typically different types of logs for different types of components, such as security, applications, systems, things like that, network. These files can be used for troubleshooting, for you to do research, things like that. They'll let you know if it's the same application that's causing your crash every single time, or is it different applications? You know, because we want to try to find out the root cause, not just treat our symptoms. And as we discussed, they are found in Event Viewer. Yes, DW. Did you have something?
Why?
No, I saw you come off mute, so I thought you were about to say something.
No, I must have just picked up the F-14 that just flew over my house.
I live right next to a Navy base, so I get it. Or a
We
naval
don't
air
get
station.
them often, but when they do, they're pretty loud.
Depending on the wind, we're right in the flight path for the landing for the naval air station. So some of them can rattle stuff off the shelves.
That's what you think. They're really just spying on you. Though.
They're just what?
They're really just spying on you. They want to know what you're up to.
Yeah, right. There you go. Maverick, permission to buzz the tower. All right, system recovery options. We discussed this a little bit, where you can get into startup, System restore, system image recovery, things like this. These are two different versions of the Windows recovery environment. And then you would select through. The one you would most likely see nowadays is this one here. This is the one they use for Windows 10. I think Windows 7 Vista used one that looked like this. This is your Windows recovery environment, or WinRe. WINRE. All right. Startup repair. Kind of a do-it-all option. It does several things once you initiate it. It'll go through your registry and repair any corrupted files there, which is nice. Accessing the backup on the hard drive, it can restore critical boot files, system driver files, non-working drivers, roll back any of them that weren't working at that time. Uninstall any uncompatible service packs and patches, run checklists, make sure your hard drive is working good, do a memory check to make sure your RAM is doing good. So thankfully, it does a lot of these things at one shot. Just can be time consuming instead of running some of these things individually. System restore, as we talked about earlier, creates that restore point for the operating system and system settings, does not create an image of your files, stuff like that. Here's what it'll look like. You can save several different restore points as you so choose, depending on the frequency. Like it could be every hour, every day, every week. To create these restore points, this is not done automatically. So if this is not turned on in your system, it's a good idea to go in, turn it on, and go ahead and do your first restore point. If everything is working good on your system, make a restore point now. That way, if something happens in the future, you can come back to now. Unfortunately, a lot of viruses like to corrupt system restore. That way, if you try to go back, their virus is still a part of that system. But we will get into, unfortunately, what you have to do if your system gets corrupted. But we'll talk about that when we get into security. But if you install a new update, it's not working so great, you can always come back to system restore, roll back to the previous version for that. Image recovery. Images are a beautiful thing. So what we can do is we can create what is called an image of a system. So say you and your IT department have spent a long time working on operations. So you know these are the programs that they need. These are the settings that need to be in place. Here's the things that they don't need to have access to. Here are the security measures that we need to take, and so on and so on and so on. And that's just for operations. So you can create what is called a master image or a golden image for that particular department. So whenever you bring somebody new into the system, you download that image to their computer. They have everything they need to get started. You might have to tweak just a little bit to make it fit for them. But for the most part, everything that they need is installed in one particular image. This image may be different than you use for HR. So HR would need access to different things, and they don't need access to a lot of the operational stuff, right? So they may need access to personnel files, various things like that. Accounting may need access to different things as well. So you may have an image for each group in your company, and depending on when the person's coming in, you can install that image so that they're ready to go pretty quickly. You don't need to worry about missing anything, making mistakes. It's all in this general image. Also, if a system starts to have major images, you can use that same image as a recovery image to restore many of the files or systems onto someone's computer. Now, these images aren't static. You don't create it once and you're done. No, as new patches, updates, everything, as they come out, you need to update your images so that they would match. That way, you know all the security measures, tools they need, things they need access to, things they don't need access to are already created within that image. And then you have your primary working copy that you would build from at that point. Any questions on that? Oh. All right. Repair disk. Greg, since you're going ahead and doing this, why don't you read this one for us?
All right, repair disks. 1 second. Okay. Our repair disks allow you to recover a computer and bring it back to the point where it was when it was new. It can only be used to reinstall the operating system on the PC. The Windows Backup and Restore tool allows you to create a system repair disk in Windows 7. To create a system repair disk, follow these steps. Step 1, open Backup and Restore by clicking the Startup button. Click in Control Panel, click in System and Maintenance, and then click in Backup and Restore. 2, in the left pane, click Create a System Repair Disk, and then follow the steps. If you're prompted for an administrator password or confirmation, type the password and provide confirmation.
Thank you, sir.
Mine is still running.
Yours is still running.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes longer than others. Some of these systems, these processes aren't instantaneous.
You will have a 1 terabyte SSD, so I don't know. Probably that's what it is.
Yeah. It might do it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So yeah, basic process for creating a repair disk. Instead of clicking through all of these stuff, you can quite literally just search for create repair disk. Although for the purposes of the exam, they may say, what is the path to getting to creating a repair disk, or where might you find it? And you would find it under your control panel. So where would I go to create a system repair disk? Under the control panel. Understood, DW. All right. 32 versus 64-bit patches. So when we're looking at the file folder, if you see x86, that refers to a 32-bit. I'm not sure why they did that. I'm guessing it might have been the year that 32-bit came into play. Guessing. But 64-bit, it would be x86/64. If you see IA64, obviously it refers to a 64-bit, or X64 is a 64-bit. So if you have a 32-bit Windows, you have to use 32-bit patches. As much as we would like, we can't run 64-bit applications on 32-bit processors. They can't handle it. On a 64-bit, however, depending on the processor, you must get the 64-bit processor, but you likely can run 32-bit applications or 64-bit. So 32s cannot run 64s, but 64s often can run 32s. Remember the acronym we used? A Ferrari can run at the pace of a rabbit, but a rabbit cannot run at the pace of a Ferrari. All right, booting into safe mode. Stephanie, can you read for us, please?
Boots to safe mode. Safe mode starts up Windows, but loads only very basic. Non-vendor specific drivers for mouse, keyboard, storage, and system service, along with 800 by 600. Vista 7 or 1024 by 768. Windows 8 or Windows 8.1 resolution monitor. Once a safe mode tool such as Device Manager can be used to locate and correct the source of a problem.
Excellent. Thank you. Safe mode basically just turns off all the bells and whistles. Gives you bare minimum stuff to operate with. And that hurt. But you can sit there and go and turn on applications one at a time and see which one is causing you your problem. But it allows you to at least get in there, work with the system, and do some diagnostics to figure out what is causing your issues. So if you're booting in and it looks like it's booting, but you're getting a black screen and you can't seem to do anything because, again, you got a black screen, so you can't maneuver to different operations, you can always boot into safe mode. It's using a much lower resolution, may allow you to see because you may have problems with your video card or something along those lines. And this would allow you to run diagnostics and check and see if that is causing your problem. So that would be your boot into safe mode. MS config. See here, Bernard, can you read for us, please?
The MS config utility helps troubleshoot startup problems by allowing to selectively disable individual items that normally are executed at startup. It works in most versions of Windows, although the interface Windows is slightly different among versions. There is no menu command for the utility. So you use the start run, type MS config and press enter.
Excellent, thank you. So yeah, you just go into your start menu. They have a run option. They'll have a little folder that pops up, type in MS config and it loads you right into it. Each version is going to look slightly different, but it allows you to kind of figure out what's going on in startup, what systems are, starting up when you bring up your computer, and do some troubleshooting from there. Powerful tool, one you'll use pretty regularly, and one I recommend getting comfortable with. Questions? Again, we will get some practice with these in Coursera and test out. This is just kind of a definitional introduction and letting you get to know them a little bit. All right, finally, we get into our command prompt, which allows us to do a lot of interesting things on the system. It allows us to run multiple utilities, and it is launched, as we said earlier, by going into the run option under our start menu and typing in either command or CMD, and it'll give us the option to go ahead and initiate this process. If we wanted to launch it as an administrator, we would right click on it, the menu would pop up, and then we would slide down and select run as administrator. Gives us escalated privileges to make changes to the system at that point. All right. Get through that. We will get into a lot of these commands and stuff when we get into network, which will be tomorrow. There we go. This is a very light introduction to command line. There is more that will come as we move through some of these technical sessions. But again, we will get lots of practice and exposure to this stuff. And the goal is to over prepare for the exam. So when we sit for the exam, it's second nature. We don't even think about it. But by now we should be able to identify some of the common issues that come up with Windows and common troubleshooting applications to use when diagnosing. Describe how to resolve some of these common issues, what tools we may use, go to in order to fix said issues. And we should be able to name which system utilities or administrative tools to use for given scenarios. Again, we will get more into command line. This was just briefly touching on it the first time. Questions, comments, concerns? Overwhelmed, underwhelmed, whelmed? Where are we at?
Like right in between whelmed and overwhelmed.
All right.